Okay, my name is David Won. I'm the tax compliance manager with the University of California Office of the President. Uh, Before we start, I'd like to introduce my team. Benjamin Chai, he's our senior tax analyst. He'll talk about how to treat scholarship and fellowship grants for income tax purpose. And then Jennifer Lim, she's our tax analyst also, who joined our tax team last year, and she'll go over 1098T. So IRS Form 1098T is a tuition statement. And after that, Marcia Johnson, who's our tax expert on international taxation, she will go into details about IRS filing requirements for international students. So yeah, if you can go to the next slide. Then. So our target audience today is UC graduate students, and this workshop is intended to provide general information only. So please consult your tax professional if you are seeking advice on specific tax questions, such as whether you must or should file tax return for the year 2021. So there is a huge difference between must and should. Must means you are required to file tax return, otherwise you will be subject to penalty if you don't file. Should means you don't have to file the tax return. However, it could benefit you if you had a capital loss from stock transaction and you like to carry over the loss to the future year so you can offset against other income. Again, I encourage you to go and see your tax professionals for any specific inquiry you may have. Also, I'm kindly asking you to hold on to your questions until we get to the last slide. We'll take your questions then. And please do not ask any questions in the chat box, since we don't have any designated person to keep track of the questions, because it's just hard to do while they are presenting. We can go to the next slide. So normally the IRS individual tax filing due date is April 15, but this year the due date is April 18, so you have an extra day. For those requesting an extension, you have until Monday, October 17 to file. So now I'm gonna turn it over to Ben.
Hi everyone, so I'm Ben Tsai, and I'm going to start with this slide, fellowship grants. So how does the IRS treat fellowship grants for income tax purposes? So fellowship payments are taxable unless they are excluded from taxable income under Section 117A of the Internal Revenue Code. Non-compensatory fellowship grants need to be reported on your tax return because they are non-qualified fellowships, as explained in later slides. So compensatory fellowship grants. This type of grant represents compensation for services if either of the following apply. There is a requirement for past, present, or future teaching, research, or other employment services for those of you receiving these fellowships, or if the grant payment enables you to pursue studies or research primarily for the benefit of the grantor. So since these are compensatory, it makes you an employee, and therefore the compensation you receive are as part of your gross income. It must be reported as gross taxable income on your income tax returns and may be subject to OASDI and Medicare and W-2 reporting. So taxable versus non-taxable scholarships and fellowships. So basically scholarships and fellowships, they're essentially taxed in a similar manner. So, and treated in a similar manner. So they are non-taxable if they are used to cover your tuition and fees, both academic and non-academic tuition fees. And these fees would have to be required for your enrollment or attendance at the university. And also covers books, supplies, and equipment required for your courses of instruction at the university. These non-taxable scholarships and fellowships are referred to as qualified, which is short for qualified tuition and related expenses but this is for scholarships and fellowship purposes only. Now, scholarships and fellowships, they're taxable if they're used for expenses other than required tuition, books, fees, supplies, equipment, and any other academic and non-academic fees that are required as a condition for enrollment. These taxable scholarships are referred to as non-qualified. So examples include room and board, travel, and other living expenses. And David's going to talk briefly about the kiddie tax. Oh, David, you're on mute.
So kiddie tax is a tax liability on child investment and unearned income, including taxable scholarship. So they are normally investment type income, such as taxable interest, dividend, capital gains, rent, royalties, and distribution from the trust if the child is a beneficiary of the trust. So the kiddie tax was first introduced in 1986, and this is actually targeted at parents who want to take advantage of their child's lower tax bracket. So it's intended to discourage those people from transferring their ownership of their income producing asset to a child with a much lower tax bracket. So here the child actually means students under age 18 and full-time college students under age 24 at the end of 2021. If your passive income, such as interest and dividend plus unearned income, exceeds 2,200, then it may become subject to IRS Form 8615 filing requirement. So in 2021, the first $1,100 is tax-free. However, the next $1,100 is taxed at the child's own income tax rate. However, anything above 2,200 is going to be taxed at the marginal tax rate of the parent, which is usually higher than the child tax rate. And if your child's only income is interest and dividend income, but not including any unearned income, such as taxable scholarship, and that total is less than 11,000, your parent may be able to elect to include that income on their tax return, rather than file the return for their child using IRS 8814. So it is critical that you consult your tax professional whether you should file 8615 or 8815. It's likely that if your unearned income includes taxable scholarship, that you need to file IRS Form 8615, not 8814. And please keep in mind that for 2018 and 19 tax years, the kiddie tax was calculated at what's called a modified trust and estate tax rate, which is higher than the individual tax rate. That was just for the 2018 and 19 tax years, and it went back to the individual tax rate in 2020, which was the rate previously used prior to 2018. So the good news here is that recently tax law has been changed to allow people to modify their tax for 2018 and 19 years. So if you file tax return with Form 8615 in 2018 and 19, you can go ahead and amend the return to get a refund. Again, you need to seek advice from your tax professional. Then let's go to the next one, the emergency grant. So emergency grant, this brought up to our attention at the last minute before the workshop. And we don't really have much experience dealing with the emergency grant. But the key point here is that any emergency grant to the students during the pandemic, for example, higher education emergency grant pursuant to the Coronavirus Aid, Relief and Economic Security Act, which is commonly referred to as CARES Act, should not be recognized as taxable income, as they are deemed IRS Section 139 qualified disaster payments. It will be still included in the box 1 of a 1098-T as a qualified tuition and related expenses. we did receive a question from campus with regard to how they should apply the emergency grant to the outstanding balance of student accounts and whether this can be done without student permission. So the institution may discharge student debt or unpaid balance by discharging the complete balance of debt as a lost revenue and reimbursing through their higher education emergency institutional grants. Our interpretation is that this can be done without student permission. But if the university is actually providing additional emergency grant to the students, then it is at the discretion of the student to decide how the money should be allocated. In that case, the university needs student consent before they apply to the outstanding balance. So now you can go to the next slide.
Thank you, David. So yeah, this slide is just for lifetime learning tax credits since you're all graduate students here. So this only applies to students filing, those of you who are filing as U.S. citizens or U.S. or resident immigrants, and we'll get to the definition. We'll get to the Marshall will provide more information about the terminology resident immigrants. So generally, you'll receive a Form 1098-T, though it might not include all expenses like books, and other supplies. So you'll have to check your receipts, like your credit card statements, to find those. So basically, it's derived from the tax credits definition of qualified tuition and related expenses. So it's basically anything it's basically a credit for tuition required for the enrollment or attendance of the university, academic fees required for the enrollment or attendance of the university, as well as books, supplies, and equipment required for the courses of instruction at the university. And remember, this definition of qualified tuition and related expenses for this credit is different from the definition of qualified tuition and related expenses for non-taxable scholarship and fellowship purposes, because unlike the non-taxable scholarships and fellowships, non-academic fees are disallowed under the code section for this particular credit, such as student activity fees, athletic fees, insurance expenses, or other expenses unrelated to your academic course of instruction, even though they're actually required for enrollment. And when Jennifer presents, on the 1098-T, we'll give a couple examples of how you can structure how you can consider structuring the way you calculate your taxable income to help you with keeping your taxable income lower and also potentially reduce your income taxes. So the credit so this slide, it's more on the lifetime learning credit. So you'll attach a Form 8863 to offset income taxes. And again, you must be a U.S. citizen or resident immigrant. And the concept of a credit is you initially calculate your income taxes first, and then you apply the credit to reduce your income taxes. Now, this only applies for federal income taxes, and this credit does begin phasing out when your modified adjusted gross income, also known as above the line income, is at least $80,000 for those of you who are single, or $160,000 if you're filing a joint return, and is no longer available if your modified adjusted gross income is at least $90,000. If you're single, at $180,000 if you're joint. Oh shoot, I'm sorry, that there's an error on this. That should say 2021, not 2020. I apologize for that. Let's see. The credit is limited to a maximum of $2,000 for the year 2021, and there is a link to from the IRS to help you determine if you're eligible for that credit. And next, I'll turn it over to Jennifer to provide some information about the 1098-T, and a couple of examples.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for attending. And I'm going to be addressing Form 1098-T, which is also known as the tuition statement. And the 1098-T is the mechanism actually for reporting qualified tuition and related expenses, scholarships, as Ben had mentioned, fellowships, and grants administered by the university. And it's very, very important to note, and this is without regard for its possible taxability. We'll get into that later, but that's a very important notation. The Form 1098-T is also generally provided to US citizens and resident immigrants. So we have an example coming up of the 1098-T. And in this particular example, we'll just assume a few things right now. We're going to look at box 1, which is $25,000 for qualified tuition and related expenses. Box 5 in this particular case, let's say it's about $10,000 in scholarships. And in order to calculate the adjusted qualified education expenses, we take box 1, which is the tuition, and reduce it by the $10,000, which is in box 5 of scholarships. And in this case, where the result is the adjusted qualified education expenses are $15,000. So actually, let's go on to one more example, and I think it'll be more clear even through this scenario what exactly are the results. So in this particular example, I'll walk you through it. We have a scenario. So if a scholarship exceeds qualified education expenses, we're going to assume the following. We have in box 5, the scholarship or fellowship grants of $30,000. And then in box 1, it's a combination of two components. It's comprised of $25,000 in tuition, as well as we're including $1,000 in non-academic enrollment fees. And in this particular case, we're going to say this is student health insurance, which is a very common expense that all of you incur, as well as books and or required course material of $500. So we're going to pose the question here, how much of this is taxable, non-qualified scholarship and or fellowship? So if you move on to the next slide, you'll see here how it's all laid out on the actual 1098-T. So in order to calculate what is a non-qualified scholarship and fellowship payment, we first begin with box 5 of $30,000, which is scholarship funds. We then further reduce it, and we're going to reduce it here first by using the determined qualified scholarship amount, the non-academic fees here in this particular case, which is the insurance that we talked about earlier, the health insurance. We're going to further reduce it by the $25,000 in qualified tuition, as well as we're going to reduce it even further by the required books, which was about $500. So your result here is $3,500 in taxable income, because in this particular case, your scholarship amount exceeds your expenses that you incurred. Okay, so let's.
Yeah. So I just wanted to add that remember that $500 in your required books, they're likely not going to show up on the 1098-T. So again, just make sure you double check your receipts or credit card statements and find them, so then you can try to reduce your taxable income as much as possible.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Thanks, Ben. That is not necessarily an expense that is tracked or represented on this 1098-T. So yeah, it's very crucial that you really monitor and track it, and put it in an envelope if it's something as simple as that. Okay. So our third example in this particular case is a little different. The dollar amounts are a little different, but for instance, if the scholarship here in this particular case is less than the qualified education expenses, we're going to have the following incur. We're going to have in box 5, we're going to have $20,000 in scholarship funds. And in box 1, it is $29,000. But this again is going to be comprised of two components. We have $28,000 in tuition, And then we have $1,000, again, of that non-academic enrollment fees. For instance, we're going to use, again, student healthcare insurance. And then here again is the $500 in books and or required course material. So again, we're going to pose the question back to you. How much of this are out of pocket or available for the credit, the true tax credit? So if you go to the next slide, you can see in the corresponding box on 1098T, we begin with box 5, again, with $20,000 in the scholarship. We further reduce this by the $1,000, which again is, in this particular case, we use example as insurance. We further reduce it by the qualified tuition of $28,000, and then even further by the required books, in this particular case, $500. The end result is $9,500, where the expenses now exceed the scholarship. And here, I wanted to draw your attention, and this is a particular note that please remember that the credit has a $2,000 limit. Now, this limit can be further reduced just depending upon your particular personal income and qualified education expenses. So be aware that that is something that you have to be aware of. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And I just wanted to note that, yeah, the lifetime learning credit, which is what this one is. So basically, if your income is low enough that you're eligible for a full credit and not reduced amount, again, it's going to be your 20% times whatever your adjusted qualified education expenses is. So 20% times the $9,500. And with that, I'm going to go to the next slide. So reporting of non-qualified scholarship and fellowship payments. So the university is not required to report these payments to the IRS or withhold taxes on these payments unless you are a non-immigrant. In that case, you'll be reported on the IRS form 1042S. If those of you who are U.S. citizens or resident immigrants, you're not getting a form 1042S. Again, Marshall will explain more about the 1042S in a later slide. So those of you who are U.S. citizens or resident immigrants, you will have to self-report the total annual value of your scholarships and fellowships, including benefits provided to yourselves and your dependents when you prepare your U.S. and California income tax return. So let's see. Next slide is those of you who are teaching assistants or research assistants. So generally, university employees who receive tuition reductions for graduate level courses are subject to imputed taxable income on the reduced tuition. So it would end up being reported on W-2. But for those of you who are employed, who are graduate students who are employed by the university as teaching assistants or research assistants, you may receive tuition reduction for your graduate level courses, and these reduced tuition for those of you who are teaching assistants or research assistants will not be subject to imputed income, because there's a code section, section 117D5, which defines it as qualified tuition reduction. But and again, please note that whatever actual wages or salaries you do have, it's still going to be subject to federal and state income taxes. Unfortunately, they don't consider your regular wages and salaries qualified tuition reduction in that case. And with that, I'll turn it over to Marcia.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So I want to start with saying that we're changing our terminology as how we used to use the terms resident aliens and non-resident aliens. And President Biden is really pushing to change that, because he sees it as a derogatory type term. So we've changed it to immigrant, so resident immigrant and non-immigrant for a non-resident. Next slide. So income taxation of non-qualified scholarships and fellowship grants. So federal income taxes, who would be required to pay? US citizens, resident immigrants, non-immigrants, but it depends because there are things that might change the taxability of those. So federal income taxes for US citizens and resident immigrants are subject to the regular graduated income tax rates on income received from all sources. That includes income received from US sources and any income received from outside the United States. Next slide. So federal income taxes for non-immigrants. So non-qualified scholarships and fellowships are reported on IRS Form 1042-S. And generally, the university has to withhold taxes on these. The highest tax rate is 30%. But for some non-immigrants that are on like an F, J, M, or Q visa, there is a reduction in that 30%, and we're required to withhold 14%, unless, of course, there's a tax treaty, which we will get into the next slide. Okay, so federal income taxes for non-immigrants, the withholding laws. So exceptions to the withholding laws is foreign source fellowship, doesn't have to be reported, income tax treaties that reduce or eliminate US withholding taxes. And there is a list of tax treaties on the IRS website, so you can go there to get more information. And then a grant that is qualified scholarship or fellowship and it's not subject to tax withholding. And next slide. So this is just an example of the Form 1042-S, which is your income tax statement and which would be filed with your income tax return, your 1040 and or to the IRS. And go to the next slide. So for tax treaty exemption, a non-qualified scholarship or fellowship paid to a non-immigrant may be treated as tax exempt for federal tax purposes if the non-immigrant is from a country that has a treaty with the United States. If the non-qualified scholarship or fellowship is deemed to be exempt, then the non-immigrant would need to complete additional forms. And for any scholarships or fellowships, the additional form that would be completed would be a Form W-8 then. And any tax treaty exemptions, you can get information on which countries and how you would claim these. It would be in publication, IRS publication 519 and 901. Or you can contact your campus international office, and we use the Glacier tax compliance software at the university, so you can get access to Glacier by contacting your international office, and they will assist you in getting into Glacier and filling out your Glacier rate. And for dual status immigrants, if you feel you may be a dual status immigrant for the tax year, please refer to IRS publication 519. And that would mean that you were maybe a non-resident for part year and then became a resident later. So, and you can find information on that in publication 519, and you can also contact the international office, and also the Glacier tax software would also walk you through that process and help you determine that.
So I'd like to actually address how the fellows will be reporting the taxable fellowships. And in this particular case, we're going to be talking about the IRS Form 1040 and 1040 NR, two very distinctive forms. So from a federal income tax reporting perspective, US citizens and US resident immigrants report their fellowship grants and estimated tax payments on IRS Form Line 1. And since these lines for these types of IRS forms are only really specified for W-2 reportable income, the 1040 instructions will actually indicate that you write in SCH and the fellowship amount on the dotted line next to line 1 of the IRS 1040. And we'll show an example shortly, but this has to be very clearly delineated so the distinction can be made that this is truly not W-2 income. And then for non-immigrants, we report their fellowship grants on 1040 on the 1040 NR line 1B. Now, it is imperative that we be sure to be sure to file for 1040 NR, not 1040. And we want to make this particular note that IRS has mistakenly sent stimulus checks to non-immigrants due to incorrect filing for 1040, which could potentially affect visa status if not corrected. So please, please, please be aware of that fact. And we recommend checking with the Campus Glacier office to use Glacier actually to print 1040 NR. It's not always that readily available. So again, we highly recommend checking with your Campus Glacier office. And other e-filing software may not actually produce your 1040 NR. So if you go to the next slide, you're going to see here on line 1 how it's been included and distinctively earmarked SCH on line 1 and 10,000 in that particular type of income. So it's very crucial that that delineation be very clear on your 1040 so that there is no mistakes made. If you kindly go to the next slide. That's just the second page of the 1040. So on the 1040 NR, you will notice that on line 1B on the 1040 NR, you will complete it and populate it with the amount of 10,000. That's if you're using 1040 NR for the non-immigrants. And then again, you will see that line populate on line 11, so the $10,000 amount. So, but again, very, very, please be certain that you are using the appropriate form so that this amount is classified and filed appropriately.
Oh, I just wanted to point something out. Let's see. There's a slight typo. Sorry, I didn't notice a slight typo. Estimated tax payments do not go on line 1. I don't know how that slipped in there. I think we were trying to put it on another line, which it should be. Your estimated tax payments should show up. Let's see. Oh, it should show up on line 26. So that slide will be, that part will be fixed. Will be fixed later. Sorry, I apologize for that. Oh, Jennifer, did you want to go to the next slide?
Yeah, if you'd be kind enough to do so, thanks. Thanks, Ben, for pointing that out too. And then here we'd like to point out resources that we've made available. These are incredible resources. There's a wealth of information. Ben has been good enough to also hyperlink this, which makes it very easy to use, and the resources are really at your fingertips. And we'd like to draw attention particularly to a number of different, for instance, on the irs.gov is a site we rely on very heavily, but Ben has hyperlinked a number of different sites. So again, we've got everything from e-filing information to Glacier Prep to the Franchise Tax Board, which is the state of California. We've also got form instructions for 1040, 1040 NR, and 1040 ES, which is the estimated payments. And then we also, for your convenience, we've also included a number of different IRS publications, in particular, the ones that probably are very helpful. They all are, but the individuals ones, particularly the U.S. Guide for Immigrants, as well as tax benefits for education. And in addition to that, there's also different resources available from the National Taxpayer Advocate Service. So we encourage you to use these. We encourage you to, reference them, and it's a wealth of information. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. And then, so California, this subject is just California state income taxes for those of you who are California residents. So who are required to pay? Those of you who are U.S. citizens, resident immigrants, and non-immigrants. And in the case of those of you who are non-immigrants, California does not generally conform to federal tax treaties. So, so if you're a resident of foreign countries who perform services in California, or if you receive income from California sources, you're usually going to be subject to state income tax withholding. So with California, they classify the individuals to two categories: those of you who are residents of California, and those of you who are non-residents of California. Generally, a resident of California for income tax purposes is someone who lives in California for more than 9 months in a tax year. Those of you who file a resident tax return or you register to vote, you might want to go to FTB publication 1031 for guidelines on California residency status. And those of you who are non-residents of California, California does not require reporting or withholding on fellowship grant payments, except for the portion that represents payment for services, basically if you're an employee. So, so you should review your requirements for self-reporting these items that will be subject to California state income taxes. And as for how you report, so for those of you who are California residents, you report on federal adjusted gross your federal adjusted gross income that we calculated earlier on line 13 of FTB form 540. And those of you who are California non-residents or part-year residents, you report your federal adjusted gross income on line 13 of FTB form 540NR. E-filing software should be able to produce the FTB form 540 for those of you who are not residents of California, unlike the because something we forgot to mention earlier, e-filing software generally won't be able to produce IRS form 1040NR. So this is an example of a form 540 for those of you who are California residents. You take the adjusted gross income that was calculated from an earlier example from the IRS form and put it in line 13. And for those of you who are non-residents of California, you'll take your the adjusted gross income you had from your federal calculations and put it on line 13 as well. And here's some resources, hyperlinks of resources you can go to, including the Franchise Tax Board's website for individuals. Also, and also the Franchise Tax Board has their own online filing options, as well as instructions for the 540 and 540NR. And these are just some university resources. We have the UC website here for our office, and also Glacier. For those of you who are non-immigrants, check in with your campus Glacier office. They may be able to at least produce the federal IRS form 1040NR. And with that, we open up to any questions. So what you can do is unmute yourself when you have a question and just ask.
Will these slides be made available online?
Yeah.
And the recording?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. So we're not allowed to ask specific questions. Is that correct?
Specific, well, specifically, like specifically to well, we're not doing it for your income tax return. I mean, you could try asking, and then we can determine whether or not.
Great. Well, I recently received a grant, but it's meant for research purposes. But the way they dispersed it was through tuition. It's seen as a departmental award, which is treated as income. It's on my 1098-T and treated as like an award, scholarship or fellowship award. But it's purely meant for research purposes. Is there any way to exclude that from the income side, or is it just treated as income? I guess is my question. Thank you.
Let me get to the 1098T slide. Yeah, so basically, it's probably showing up around here, right?
Yes,
On
that's
your
correct.
1098T. Yeah, the only way you can try to exclude as much of it as possible is if you have qualified tuition or related expense. So box one stuff, and as well as any books or supplies required for your enrollment. So yeah. Otherwise, there's no other way to exclude it.
Okay, thank you. And on top of that, my question is next year, because it's treated as income, next year, can I write those off individually when I purchase materials with that income or with that scholarship, basically? Thank you.
In terms of, I can tell you if it's for your required courses or enrollment or PhD and what or master or your degree, then again it's just you're just doing this. But if you're talking about if it has nothing to do with that, we recommend you check with your tax advisor.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Hi.
Yeah.
Oh,
Go ahead.
2 questions. What tax advisors would you recommend? And also, I received a grant, I guess, for a fellowship, but it was just for tuition. So I really didn't see the money. It went straight to Cal Central. And Guardian paid my tuition. So is it really necessary for me to provide that information of tuition expensive if I didn't pay it, but a guardian did?
Is that your employer or guardian?
No, someone in my family.
Oh, a
Not
guardian
employer.
paid. Are you filing your own income tax return or are you
Yes, I am.
dependent? I mean, or are you going to be a dependent of some?
No, I'm not a dependent.
So you should. So basically, you should be getting a 1098T essentially. Let's see. So, and you said your guardian was actually paying your tuition, so it's not really like a fellowship or scholarship, right?
So I received one from the university, which is, I mean, it's not like 30,000. It was really low, but I also have this guardian, so I paid some of the tuition myself.
And your guardian, paid some of the tuition on that part, right? Hello.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I think you might be cutting in and out on this.
You're correct.
Oh, yeah. So whatever you paid out of pocket, as well as your guardian paid out of pocket, that's not going over here because that's not considered scholarship or fellowship. That's like an out of pocket expense. So for sure, at least what you paid, that's your portion of out of pocket. In terms of as for your guardian, you may want to just speak with a tax advisor about that to determine whether you could treat it as your own pay, personal out of pocket expenses, or whether it cannot be treated that way. As for tax advisors, I mean, we don't personally know anybody in particular, but I mean, places like I mean, we can only think of general names like Jackson Hewitt or H&R Block or any other and whatnot. So that's pretty much. I mean, we're not necessarily recommending them. We just those are just names that pop off on our head as for tax advisors. And probably TurboTax as well. I'm sure they have some representatives. And again, And if your income is low enough, let's see. Here we go. Oh, oops, sorry. That was not where I wanted to take you. Here, this is what I want. If your income is low enough, you can, if you go to that website, you'll be able to go to individuals, and then there should be a free. So basically, this is a website on the IRS that can help you with potentially looking for free filing software. So if your adjusted gross income is $73,000 or less, you can. There's some free choices you can have. Let's see. Basically, you'd have to go. A recommendation would be to go to that IRS website and then that step-by-step process. Shoot and make sure you click there and then browse all. Yeah, this should be it. And then it'll give you like a batch of online filings services for that could potentially be free depending on your AGI. This one goes up to 73,000. This one you have to be between 16 and 73,000. Free tax USA 41,000. And I believe it should have. Usually there. Well, the other is you could probably do this too. So let's say 26. Country, state of resident, California. Yeah. So yeah, like I said, as for your question about the Guardian, like I said, check with a tax advisor about that. Let's see. Looks like Sharab, you have your hand up. Let me
Hi.
go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for presentation. I just have one question that I recently joined as a instructor for the university. So my tuition was not waived, but instead I got refund back. So will that be counted as a scholarship or will that be counted for tax purposes as my salary?
So are you like a teaching assistant?
Yes.
And you had and did you pay out of pocket initially, and then you had you had a tuition reduction, which then they refunded you?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, that should not be taxable scholarship if you paid out of pocket and then you had a reduction because of your teaching assistant job, and then you were just simply refunded for the money you initially paid. So
that will not be considered in scholarship?
No, because that would be a refund. Because what happened was you paid out of, if I'm correct, you paid out of pocket initially. Yes. Then they reduced your tuition because of your teaching assistant job, and then they just refunded your payment.
Yes.
So that's not a taxable scholarship.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, sir.
Let's see. Jay, Lil.
Hi. Sorry if you've already addressed this point, but I just had a question about how we can access the slides and recording after this presentation.
Oh, we'll have it sent to your grad school administrators, whoever, because my manager had sent the meeting invite initially to them, and they forwarded it over. So David will send it over to them, and then they'll forward it over to you. We're just waiting after this call ends. We're just gonna wait for the whatchamacallit. We're gonna wait for Zoom to finish putting together the recording, and then we'll download it and put it onto a box link for access.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. I've got Indigo Rose.
Hi. I had two super quick questions. Could you go back to that slide that where you had the 1098T
yeah, sure.
that chart?
Yeah, sure. Let me, yeah, I'm just, this is just quicker. So is it this example or this example?
Yeah, that one. Thanks. Oh
This
yeah,
one?
with the exactly. With the blue table.
Uh,
Or either, I guess. But so I'm trying to understand how to find information about non-academic fees and what that means. And I just wanted to see, this isn't reported on the 1098T, correct? This is information I have to
um,
get from elsewhere.
no, the 10 non-academic fees, generally speaking, they should be reported by your campus. If not, I would recommend you check in with your campus to see what is it, to see if they included a non-academic fees. If not, then ask for ask for what the non-academic fees are, and make sure. Yeah, and like we said, it has to be this has to be what is it? It has to be required for enrollment. If you have to pay for health insurance with student health insurance with the school, or or let's say if you have I don't know, you have a fee for well, sorry, been usually something like yeah, usually we just use student health insurance, but there's usually some other ones like athletic fees or whatnot. If you're basically required to pay for these in order to actually enroll, then you are then at least to reduce your taxable scholarships and fellowships, you can use that to reduce it. Yeah, it's only
Okay,
when you're
so
trying to do the credit, you won't be able to use that. So that's why in that case we recommend deduct this first.
okay, so if your program pays for health insurance for you, so you have no idea what the amount is, they just pay for it for you, but that amount still goes into your, what is it called, like total scholarships and grants, then you wouldn't subtract it, or like is this money that you subtract if you had to pay for it yourself from your
So
scholarships from your
so
grants?
so let's see. So you're saying like you're are you talking about your school paying for for the premiums for your health insurance?
Yeah.
So that should go into your scholarships and grants. If it does not, but I would just double check to make sure that it went in here. If it didn't go into this Fox 5, then you'll have to increase that, and then you just do it, and then you just do an offset, which would be, let's say your school paid $1,000 of the premium. If it doesn't show up here, then you have to just kind of add it over here. So that'd be 31,000, and then you just and if it shows up here or it doesn't show up here, uh, uh, you make sure you take that because it is a required non-academic fee. You would just make sure you deduct it over here to try to just offset it.
Okay, but if it's a required non-academic fee, does that mean that it's something that you have to pay for with your own kind of fellowship money that you receive, or
basically non-academic fee? If it's required for enrollment, if you use your scholarship, you can either pay it out of pocket or with scholarship. Now, if your school pays for it for you, then I believe it should show up here. If
yeah, I
not,
think
then
so.
yeah, if it shows up here, then yeah, it just goes up here. But if it didn't show up over there, then you have to make sure you add it in there. Again, we would probably recommend you check it with your campus financial aid office or registrar office to try to get the details behind your 1098T.
Okay, thank you. And I guess my other quick question was about adjusted gross income. So
yeah,
the definition for that, I guess, what is the definition for that? Is that something that is that include money that you might not actually see from your stipend, but that your school uses behind the scenes to pay for other things, or?
No. That's adjusted gross income. It's basically what you do with the federal IRS first. Basically, all your income has to show up, and then has to show up. There are maybe a couple of things that you could that are deductions that you can use to for adjusted gross income, but not too many things. So, like if you were trying to calculate your actual taxable scholarship or fellowship, then you would do that. Then those particular deductions would essentially would be allowed. It's just that they show up over here as scholarship. You basically have to calculate your actual taxable scholarship first. So essentially, they're just embedded within that, like I had shown you we had shown you on the 1098T example, and then adjusted gross, and then eventually it gets to adjusted gross income, and then from there you can take the bigger deductions like either standard deductions or itemized deductions. And adjusted gross income, it also flows into your state income tax return.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Mustafa, Yildiz.
Yes. Hi. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah.
So my status has changed from non-resident to resident alien this tax year. And I just realized the taxes were not withheld as usual. And do I still receive, am I still receiving 1042S?
So you were non-resident first and now you're a resident, right?
Yes, for this tax year, I'm a resident alien now, and
right.
I just received a W-2, and I wonder if I should also receive a 1042S.
So
I didn't receive
If
that.
you're a resident alien, you won't. Well, I shouldn't say resident alien. Sorry, I slipped. Resident immigrant. You won't receive 1042S.
Oh,
So
okay.
you'll just have to self-report.
when did you so did you say in 2021 you had, oh wait, are you saying in 2022 you became a resident immigrant?
Yes, and
Oh, okay.
I used to I'm an international student, so I used to do the tax return on Glacier, and this year instead of giving me all the documents, it just gave me a W-4, and I just realized my status has changed, and now I think I have to self-report.
So was
Right.
Then I
that
cannot
the
use
entire
Glacier,
year,
right?
though, of 2021, you were considered a resident?
Yes, it turns out.
Oh, okay, if it was for the entire year, then you won't receive a 1042S.
Okay. So I just find out my scholarship amount and do the self-report thing then.
Right, and you should, yeah, and if you're a grad student, you should be receiving a 1098T as well. And since once you became a resident immigrant in 2021, for all of 2021, you would have your campus would have been required to send you a 1098T.
Okay, instead of 1042S, I
Right.
should receive a 1098T.
Yeah,
And they should send it to me, right?
they should have already been prepared in January, so you may want to check with your campus.
Yeah, okay. I'm not sure if I received that, so that was my confusion. I was like, I
they-
was missing a
they-
document or something.
It might
Okay.
be, yeah, a lot of these 1098Ts I've noticed have been showing up online, so you might want to check with your campus to see how you can access it. Probably your
All right,
registrar's office.
Great. And one last question.
Yeah.
So what is this W-4 document is for?
Basically,
do I use it?
Yeah, because well, if you're an employee, basically, because you're now a resident immigrant, your tax your tax as if you're a U.S. citizen. So you're so that means, and if you're getting wages or salaries from the the university, yeah, you have to provide the W-4 to, so then they can properly assess how much to withhold.
But the tax year has already is already over, right? So they didn't withhold taxes, and this is I give this
Oh.
document to the school for next tax year, the coming tax year.
Wait, actually, did you say a W-4 or W-9?
W-4.
W-4, usually that's for employment. Are you working
You
for the
wouldn't use
university?
it if you're not working.
Yes,
You wouldn't need it.
Yeah, you would.
I couldn't
Yeah,
hear the last thing. Sorry.
yeah. If it's because usually it would usually if it's for, because if you're working for the university, they'll want a W-4. If you're a U.S. citizen or resident immigrant. If you're a if it's just for certain other trying to think when would, if it's just to like kind of identifying you, it might be a W-9. That one is for U.S. citizens and resident immigrants for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it says employees withholding certificate. My question is, do I use it? Do I mail it to IRS with the tax return, or is it just for campus?
No, W-4 is only for your for anybody who's employing you.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. I've got Andres Betancourt Torres.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you. I want to ask about reporting health insurance. I'm a first year, so I'm under student health. My understanding is that I made a form to prove that I had that insurance. I was working before, so I need another form from the former employer to prove that I was covered with health insurance for that time. Am I correct in this? Like I need 2 forms in that case, and in my actual case, for a couple months, I was covered by government health insurance. So do I need another form, essentially for each health insurance?
So this is so you have your own health insurance, right?
Yes.
Not health insurance. Not from the university, right?
My current health insurance is from the university.
Your current
Since
health
yeah. Yes.
Your current health insurance is from the university.
Exactly. But I started in July, so early in the year, I was covered by other health insurance outside of the university.
Okay, and you're just asking, and your question was about some forms the university asked you if you were covered, right?
What forms how many forms I need to provide for the health insurances that cover me. My understanding is that I need to prove that I have health insurance through all year. Yeah.
Oh, that might be I think that one might have more to do with campus requirement for health insurance.
Actually, I think he wants to know the form, so I think
it's a 1095.
about a 1095.
Yeah.
Oh, that one.
Yeah, and you probably will receive one from each insurance carrier that you had. So to prove that you were covered all the entire year or whatever, if you've had 2 different insurances or 3 different ones, you might receive like 2 or 3 different forms.
Oh yeah. Oh, that reporting. So basically that one is, it's pretty much your proof of insurance for the whole year. It's part of the Affordable Care Act requirements. You generally don't send it to the IRS, but you do keep it as your proof. So then you don't. So essentially, it shows you met the minimum health insurance coverage requirement for the year. It was so that you would avoid the into paying the tax for not meeting the individual mandate.
And Andre, if I may, those forms are furnished by your employer. They should
Mhm.
be sending it directly to you. So if you haven't received it, I would reach out either to your, particularly if campus is one of them, reach out to campus and their payroll department or UC Path and to your other former employer. That's what I would do. But again, you're not responsible for generating it or filing
Yeah.
it with your 1040, but they are responsible for furnishing it to you and sending it to you.
Okay. And essentially through the forms, I need to prove that I was covered through the whole year, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, basically you just keep it for your records. All right, Joshua Benjamins.
Hi, my question is about what to do if I have a number in box 6 on the 1098T, which is about adjustments for a prior year.
Let's see here. Oh, let's see. Hang on, let me pull it up. Forms and instructions. Instructions. You said it was a box 4.
Box 6.
Oh, 6. Adjustments to scholarships or grants for a prior year. Let's see. I would for that one. That one we don't cover here. But what? Let's see. So it was probably. So I'm trying to think. Was it like a minus or positive or negative?
It was a positive number.
Any reduction to the amount of scholarships that were reported?
I believe a positive number means that they reduced the amount of income for the prior year, but I don't understand how that will affect the return I filed this year.
Yeah, let me try to research it a little more. Hang on a second.
Hi, Joshua. Can you send me your question through email later? We want to get to other questions because I think this may take a little while.
Sure, if you can just, can I get your email somewhere?
Sure. We'll
Okay.
provide that information at the end.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ben, let's go to David's question.
Hi, David. I'm sorry, I don't have the. There we go.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, there we go.
Asakton.
Go ahead.
Asakton. My question is, I'm a graduate student and admitted fall last year, but I reported December last year and received a tax form. Am I qualified to file tax?
What type of tax form did you receive?
I received it from, I don't know.
Is there a form number on it by any chance?
Yes, I have the form, but I don't know how. Can you see?
Let me. Do you want to do a share screen or?
Yeah, I just want to show you the paper.
Hang on. Let me pause the recording from here. So then, because it is your. Let me pause the record now.
Yeah, thank you. I entered into a domestic partnership in the last tax year, and I'm just wondering if you have any just big picture advice as to how that impacts my taxes. Because I understand in the state of California that enables me to file as if I'm married, but at the federal level, that may not be recognized.
Yeah, as with federal, they don't recognize they won't recognize a joint return for for domestic partnerships. Only marriage. With California, you're right. They'll recognize a domestic partnership as a they'll allow domestic partnerships as a joint return, but with federal, they will not. They actually do require joint filers to be married.
Okay, so if I submit my state return as married, but my federal return as unmarried, there shouldn't be any issues with that.
Yeah, with federal, you have to submit it as single.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I got Sunisha Fernandez.
Yeah, I just have a question. I don't know if it's like relevant, but I'm a graduate student and I have no income. I just joined in August. So do I need to like file any tax?
Let's see. So you had no income. You had no scholarships?
Yeah, no scholarships.
If you had no income, you would not have to, but you could still file anyway, just so it'll start the IRS's statute of limitations. So then, I mean, because you're allowed to file an income tax return at $0 if you had no income at all. Yeah, what it would do is just start the statute of limitations clock for the IRS, which is 3 years from your tax return's due date. So let's say you file by April 1st, and then the clock ticks on the IRS as to whether or not to actually audit for 3 years from April 18th. And once those 3 years are up, the IRS cannot bother you about that year anymore. Whereas if you don't file a return, the statute of limitations will stay open. Are you a non-immigrant or a U.S. citizen or a?
No, I'm not a U.S. citizen.
Not U.S. Are you considered a resident immigrant or a non-immigrant?
Non-immigrant.
Oh yeah, so you probably it's your choice as to whether or not to file a 1040 NR. So I mean if, as a non, again it's since it's $0 income, you don't legally have to. It's and plus again, even if the IRS were to audit and it turns out you never had any income to begin with, they wouldn't be able to do anything on that anyway.
Is there some filing which needs to be done for tax form 8843?
8843?
Yes. Do we need to file that?
I have. Let's see.
I'm on F1 visa, but there's no medical condition or anything like that.
I don't think so. If you don't have a medical, I think it's only for. I think it's only for if you have a medical condition. But yeah, I mean, if you had no income, in the U.S.
I think this is for the purpose of applying the substantial present test.
Oh, right. That's it. Oh yeah, that's right. Because you're on, Sunisa, are you on a visa by any chance?
Yes, F1 visa.
Yeah, you probably won't need this, especially since you've only been since you've only been here since last August anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, let me see. Yeah, you're a non-immigrant, so you probably won't need to. As David mentioned, that's to deal with a substantial presence test to try to get it exempt because of a health condition.
Thank you.
And any other questions? All right, if there are no more questions, we thank everybody for joining us, and we'll get the video as soon as we'll get the video together and then put it onto Box so then you can we can have your campuses send them over to you. All right, with that, good luck with your income tax returns, everyone.
Thank you.